My story really begins in about June of 1996. Uh, my family was in a good place. My son was in university, daughter had graduated from high school. I was working at a job that I loved in human services. And my wife was working with disabled kids in the school system. Her name was Mo. And one day in the middle of the morning, got a phone call that my wife had collapsed at work and had been taken to the hospital. And I knew instantly that it was a phone call that we had been waiting for and dreading for 28 years. We had been married for about a year. And one day my wife, who was very orthodox, mainstream, conservative, whatever, I picked her up from work where she was nursing, and we were driving home, and she looked at me and said, "You know, I keep getting this feeling that we're not going to be getting old together." And I'd had that feeling to myself, but I kept it to myself. Didn't figure it was, just my imagination or whatever else. But we agreed that if both of us had this feeling, there was probably something to it. So when I got the phone call, it was something that I kind of sensed instantly this was going to be serious. When I got to the hospital, we found out that she had fainted because of a buildup of illness related to cancer. And it was stage 4 already, so our chances of her surviving that were pretty low. So we went through the round of chemotherapy, which failed. And eventually we were told that that was all they could do. So we weathered that as best we could, and I lost her in June of 1997, almost a year from the time she was diagnosed. And life got really hard after that for me. We were very much a part of each other's lives, best friends, partners. And when she was gone, I really didn't know what to do with myself. There was nobody to come home to. The kids were out of the house and all that sort of stuff. Eventually, I sold the house that had been our home for years, and found a fixer-upper, which got me busy and working and whatever, but it still didn't fill that hole that she had occupied in my life. Missed her terribly. Eventually I wound up saying, okay, I got to get out of my own head, and having worked in human services, I was doing all the right stuff, eating regularly, going to bed regularly, exercise, the whole 9 yards, of limited value because nothing filled that spot that she had. So eventually I located a place called Jocelyn House here in Winnipeg, and I volunteered there for a while, but there was something missing. It was more just sitting with people who were absolutely in their last days and had really nothing much by way of familial support and whatever. It was pretty gloomy atmosphere. And then about that time, it did help, but about that time I happened to meet this wonderful red-headed lady that I'm married right now to. And the two of us were talking, sharing our experience. She'd lost her husband a couple of years prior. For me, it was about 5 years at that point before, since Mo had died. And we said, okay, maybe what we've been through can be of value to other people. And we found our way into being companions and supporters for the bereaved, or soon to be bereaved, here at hospice and palliative care. And for me, I think it was the combination of having somebody in my life and also feeling I was of some value to others as well. And through that, we've had some experiences, some sad, some were really life-enriching, and so forth. And eventually I was asked if I would be willing to go out to the St. Vital Mall, to the memory tree, and sit there and talk to anybody who wanted. And I said, sure, what the heck, it's winter. Anyway, went out there, and it was interesting again, a different type of an experience. At the tree, I would see people do sort of a hit and run where they would cruise by, look hard at the tree, and their faces would tighten, they would walk on. And sometimes 15, 20 minutes later, they would be back and pausing to look a little bit harder. And I would invite them over to fill out a name of somebody they cared about and put it up on the tree and so forth. And then sometimes the conversations would open up where they would start talking about what they were going through, the loss of a parent, a child, a spouse, and whatever else. So for them, I could feel the reluctance to open up those old wounds. A lot of them, I guess, were still trying to keep their heads above water just to survive through the day, and I knew what that felt like. And just the effort of talking, I could see often they would stand up and their stride would be a little quicker, and their shoulders weren't all tightened up and so forth. So that was really valuable. And I would refer them over to the bereavement support groups at Hospice Palliative Care or a couple of other places in the city where I knew those resources were to be found. And I found that really useful for my own benefit as well as I hope for theirs. Most of the people I ever saw again at the Memory Tree. I did that 2 years in a row, and I don't know whether to blame it on memory or whatever else, but I don't recall seeing the same people 2 years in a row. But I know it made a difference for them. And I think the hardest step for people under those conditions where they've lost somebody close to them is to kind of say, you know, I'm struggling and I can't see myself doing this all by myself. I'm just barely keeping my head above water. So the effort that took for them to just say, yeah, I've lost someone close to me and I need some help, just someone to talk to. So working in human services is a mixture of things, of course. But I think what keeps all of us going in this business is those moments where we can see somebody reclaim their lives, find some strength that they didn't know they had or borrow it from others for the time being, and just pick themselves up and I'm not sure walk ahead is right, maybe struggle ahead and pick up a little bit of momentum and whatever else. And some of the people that Dorothy, my current wife, and I were privileged to have is that some of the people we helped with through palliative care, we've kept in contact with over the years. And it was really neat. One lady in particular had lost her husband very tragically. They were both in their late 20s, 2 preschool children and whatever else. And she picked herself up, and quite by accident, we bumped into her at a Christmas Eve service. And she was starting to socialize again. She was a different person. She was making plans for the future, which was really nice. So I think as crappy as this could be when things don't go as well as we hope for some people and so forth, I think that's what makes it all worthwhile. There is an element of selfishness in there for people who choose to help. Sometimes we find a bit of our own healing in the stories of others, and we take strength from some of the things that they go through as well, saying, okay, maybe I can make it through for another day and whatever else. But for me, I think the biggest lesson is just to get out of my own head. And philosophically, spiritually, I think if we have a situation where we rise above our own struggles, become part of something greater than ourselves, that heals everybody.